Welcome to the My Life Count podcast, where we talk about anything dealing with mental health. My name is Jared Jones. I'm your mental health coach. And today we have a special guest. We have Dr. Bret Anderson. He's a psychologist in Colorado. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about this justice involved individuals. Hope you enjoy. Get the.
Yep.
Okay, there we go.
I got the disclaimer, knowing you are being recorded. Go.
Right. It has begun.
Yes.
Right. So, well, Dr. Anderson, first off, thank you so much for being on the show. I greatly appreciate it. I saw you on I think it was with Jim Peacock on the Peak Careers. And when I heard you, I was like, oh man, he's a psychologist, he knows what he's talking about. We're dealing with mental health. I gotta have him on the show. So thank you for accepting the invitation. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. And like we mentioned before, Jared, it's always a pleasure to be with people who are doing good work and phenomenal work. And I've listened to your podcast, so I know you're doing that work, and I really appreciate it as well. So thank you for having me on, and I'm honored to be with you.
You're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you. So, the listeners know me, but tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I started my journey in this endeavor, in this world, after I was mobilized to Desert Storm. I was in the Army for 12
Oh,
years. I was a
wow.
combat medic. Yeah. And I was I enlisted in 1982. That just now people can start calculating my age, and that's cool. I like being as old as I am. But I went straight Army, and I was a combat medic, and then, so I did active duty, and then I got out of my first tour. I went to the reserves because the whole reason for going on active duty was so that I could go to school, right? The old Montgomery GI Bill. I wanted it to pay for my schooling. Well, I did that. I accomplished that. I went to CU, University of Colorado, and I was progressing well, doing great in school. I was in my last semester when Desert Shield happened, which was October of 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And then that very next month, my only brother, my only sibling, he was killed in a traffic accident.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
he was a passenger in a vehicle. It was November 19th, 1989, and I had a reoccurrence of some of the post traumatic stress that I experienced in my military experience, and
Wow.
like most military people, we were taught to suppress that emotion, suppress that, suppress the traumatic and mental health consequences associated with that condition.
Yeah.
And so I suppressed it. I said, okay, I don't have to deal with this stuff. Well, when my brother's death happened, it all resurfaced, and I had a mental health crisis, and I was dealing with things that I didn't know how to deal with because my brother had stolen my identity. He had gotten a car in my name, an apartment in my name. He had
Wow.
taken loans out of my name. He had a duplicate driver's license with my name on it.
Wow.
Yeah, the rumors were that he was coming back the same night that he was killed, that he was coming back to murder me so he could live as me, basically,
Oh,
because he had
wow.
been incarcerated. Yeah, he had been incarcerated on larceny charges and a violent offense. He had beaten a man comatose. My brother was, yeah, he was an interesting human being, intelligent brother, um, good man, but overall he had some troubles. So that pushed me, to a point where okay, I knew I needed some help, but didn't get the help because I got mobilized to Desert Storm or Desert Shield actually, and then it became Desert Storm.
Mm.
So I had to delay my my any type of therapeutic assistance.
Right.
And then when I got back, I just had to I was dedicated on finishing school because they took me out of the last semester of my college, so I was dedicated to finishing school, which I did, and then I moved on with my life, and I just thought, okay, I can get through it like most people do. Well, it resurfaces, in all kinds of situations.
Right.
And I finally dealt with I dealt with my brother's death at that time as well. And so I had to understand the emotions that I was experiencing and to let them out. And
Mhm.
when you're in the military, you're taught to suppress, the fight or flight syndrome
Right.
mechanisms.
Right.
Well, we're taught to fight, and that means that you must suppress any fear or anxiety and do your job.
Mhm.
The life expectancy of a combat medic in a combat situation is about 32 seconds.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's longer than some other
Wow.
folks. The radio man was like 15 seconds. I was like, okay, cool. I ain't gonna stand next to him. That brother's he's going down. so,
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm
Wow.
gonna try to, yeah. But and back in my day, the Geneva Convention forced you to wear those the Red Cross.
Uh-huh. Right. Right.
And my squad leader was like, "Take that thing off, man." And I'm like, "What? I was supposed to." He said, "Take it off, because that makes you a
It's
target."
your target.
So
Yeah.
that's right, yeah. So I learned how to blend and merge, and how to be more how do I say this, clandestine and
Uh-huh.
helping these
Yeah.
individuals do this, do my work. But all that combined, pushed me into a point where I said, okay, this is unique. And as an African American male, I grew up in the city of Denver, and it was a stigma to admit that you have a mental health issue,
Right.
right?
Right.
If you admit mental health as an African American male, you're broken.
Mhm.
You ain't never gonna
Mhm.
get a date, and right, you can't get a job, all
Right.
these other
Right.
things. And I
Right.
started saying, hold up, because I'm
Look,
getting
and those are the nice terms. That's the
that's right.
nice way of putting it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well said. So I said, okay, I got to figure out, how to make this work for me. So I learned everything I could about the world of employment,
Mhm.
because employment really helped me overcome it. Employment
Yeah.
became my, how you want to call it? It became my respite away
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah.
And I found that if I dove into the things that I really wanted to do, and I was fortunate to be able to find something that really resonated with my character and who I was.
Mhm.
I said that if I dive into this type of stuff, I don't have, the psychological pain that I experience.
Mhm.
It was diluted. I didn't understand it, but I just did it. So I dove in and
Right.
became really successful. I became a national trainer. I got my master's degree in interpersonal communication. I started working with people, try to help them improve their relationships, because relationships were always falling apart in my life as well.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so, and then I got my doctorate in psychology, and I realized that okay, there's a population of individuals, veterans and incarcerated individuals, who I had been sort of on the margins of my entire life,
Right.
that really need to be aware of this assistance, and then how do they get it, and how can they use not only therapy but employment as a way to decay some of the neuropsychological changes that your brain goes through, the morphology shifts that your brain goes through
Yeah.
when you suffer trauma.
Yeah.
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 So that's what
Wow.
got me to where I'm at, man.
Wow. Wow.
Hopefully that wasn't too long a story.
No, 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 no. But that was a beautiful story. I mean, it's like, I think so many people who are in the field get in
uh
the field because they have been affected, right?
That's right.
And so it's almost, I know for me, and it sounds like for you, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know for me, a lot of the things I've done has almost been therapeutic for me to help
Yeah.
others, to
Yep.
help others go through what I've gone through. It's like it's therapeutic for me. So
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
in a in a way, it's a part of my self-care. It's like I'm gonna help you
Amen.
to help me.
There you go.
Yeah.
And what is the old axiom? Therapist, help thyself, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the things of going through a doctorate program, and I know you had to go through this, if you're a licensed counselor or a licensed therapist, you better know yourself, because when you're dealing with people, they might trigger some things inside you, you know, that make you start shitting all over them, and makes you start judging them. And, that's the last thing you want to do in this profession. So
Yeah.
yeah, I had to learn a whole bunch about myself. It was painstaking. It was arduous. But overall, um, like you just mentioned, it is therapeutic to help other people and to realize that, okay,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, you couldn't pay me enough money to do this. In fact, I could go broke and I still want to do this because this kind of work
Yeah.
really edifies me as a human being. And I think that's our job
Yeah.
as humans, is to love each other, not judge each other. So
Absolutely. Now, I did
that's
want
what
to
I'll say.
clarify one thing. I'm not licensed, right?
Oh, okay, that's
I'm,
all right.
I'm not
That's all
licensed,
right.
but you're absolutely right. Like, I think a lot of people in this field, they help.
Uh-huh.
They, whether you're getting paid for it or not, it's almost like it's a natural thing for
Yeah,
people in the field who really care. It's like you're already giving back, so it's a
yeah.
blessing to do something. It's almost like, the thing that you would do for free, right? It's just, like,
Yeah,
you're already doing it, so now
that's right.
you get to be paid to do
That's
it.
right.
It's
That's right.
it's a blessing. It's a blessing.
Well, absolutely. And I know that we're going to put a cap on this part of the conversation, but Jared, most of my colleagues are not licensed,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
they
wow.
find that well, because they find that the licensing process restricts much of the work that they can do. Yeah.
I thought I
So
was by
so
myself.
oh no, you're not by yourself in that endeavor at all. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
most of the colleagues that I work with, they have self-pay clients.
Yeah.
When you're licensed,
Hmm.
obviously you can take on Medicaid, Medicare, any
Right.
type of insurance process. But that is, that's encumbering because now you're a licensed therapist. Oh my gosh, I must really be crazy because I got to see a licensed therapist. People start saying, especially in the African American
Yeah.
community. And so yeah, you know, I don't want to define our work by the system, by the structures that the system has
Hmm.
put around it, because I think that's one of the burdens that the system provides. In fact, I heard you talk about this.
Yes.
Um, we don't, when you talked about the World Health Organization
Hmm.
definition of mental health,
Yes.
you said something that I thought, okay, this makes sense. He said, that's everybody. You said, that's everybody. And I said, he has never been more accurate. No man has ever said something more pertinent.
Wow.
That
Yeah,
is everybody. But the
it is.
key is, there are some people, and I think this population that we're going to talk about, where there is some real uniqueness, there's a specialness to how we work with this group, that
Yeah.
we need to do this, because you talked about self-awareness and resilience and being able to get to that space. They
Yeah.
need help. This group that we're going to talk about really needs help.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um, so okay, so let's get into this group. Let's get into this group. And one thing, starting off, is the labels. Okay,
yeah,
because um we- we're gonna talk about people who've been incarcerated, right?
yeah, yeah,
And you have an interesting term,
yeah,
and I don't really know. Well, I heard you on a live where you explained it
yeah.
a little bit, but how did you come up? How did this term come about? And well, what is the term? How did the term come about? And what's the importance of it?
Well said. That's a great question to start with. The term is justice involved, and I use the term citizen.
Justice
Some
involved.
people say individual or person, but the term evolved from the Reentry Council under Barack Obama. Remember, he and
Okay.
who's the Attorney General at the time, Loretta Lynch.
Yes.
Yeah, they had put together the Reentry Council, and they decided that the term that was more PC, and I don't like to use the term PC, but I think it, it's more appropriate for this group, because the term justice involved was more inclusive rather than restrictive. And what do I mean by that? Individuals who are incarcerated have been labeled as offenders or felons or convicts
Hmm.
or inmates, or even some more, or even some less pejorative type terms like resident, those type of things.
Right.
Um,
Which are
well,
all the terms that we're all familiar with, right?
oh yeah, 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 right.
And so a
Yeah,
lot
they're
of
in the mainstream. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And so the listeners and everybody they're gonna gravitate to those terms,
you
right?
got it.
So
You got it. So yeah, when we shifted to the term justice involved citizen, Because number one, these people are citizens for the most part of the United States of America. There are some who are not, but for the most part, these
Right.
individuals are citizens, and the reclaiming of their citizenship is important, and it's an important milestone in their lives when they're recapturing who they are and their identity. But more importantly, the term offender is a descriptor because that's the more common sort of mainstream term, offender,
Hmm.
of all those labels. That term is a reminder of what they did, not who they are today. And so justice involved is a way for us to mitigate that term, push it to the side and say, okay, let's move forward, let's move toward where you're going, not where you were.
Yeah.
And it helps restore hope because we talk about the stigmas that go on, and obviously this stigma is very powerful and abundant, but it restores the hope in the individual that they can recover, they can
Right.
get back into society and become a
Right.
full citizen, and and basically have reached atonement for what they did that was a breach of trust in our society. That they have hope that that can happen. And in the employment arena, I don't think there's any more important way to overcome that than to give them that the hope that this can happen. So
Absolutely.
that's why we use the term.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only, I mean, it's definitely necessary in employment, but
Mhm.
even in everyday
That's right.
life, people are constantly reminding you of what happened or what you did previously. It's almost like we have this idea that there's certain things that you can never recover from. There's certain things that you can't,
Mhm.
like we don't grow, we don't evolve, we don't whatever I did, and thank God I'm not held back to what I was doing as a teenager, but but
Yeah.
whatever I did, 10, 20 years ago that, I can't be, I always have to be reminded of that, and I can never move forward. And
Well said.
so when I heard that term justice involved, I'm like, wow, yeah, that's first off, I was like, that's somebody who is tuned in to that
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
That's somebody who understands what it's like to be called something, to be labeled something, and to realize that I'm not that anymore. That's something I did, but that's not who I am. And I don't want to constantly be reminded of what I did as if that's who I
Mhm.
am.
Mhm.
And
Well
so
said.
and so when I heard that, I said, wow, wow, that justice involved. That's, I mean, and it's funny because it's always, to me it seems like it's always the little things. It's the
Mhm.
little things that make the big changes. And
Mhm.
that's one thing, because I always say that labels are extremely important.
They are very important. Yes.
And I think the most important words in the world are the words that follow I am. And so when you say I am a sex offender, then it's like
Mhm.
you're nothing else but,
Correct.
and
Correct.
so, and those labels are hard to live down,
Amen.
in our society. And so I think it's a great thing to look at changing that,
Yes.
even changing the terminology that we use.
Yes. Yes. The paradigm shift is the most important thing that can ever happen. And I'm fully
Yes.
with you. When you say I am and it's not your name, it's
Right.
something, it's a label,
Right.
you in
Right.
trouble, right? Because
Yes.
I was an athlete in my day, and I remember brothers saying, I am a football player. But a lot of guys, they played football, but they didn't want to be defined by that.
Exactly.
And yeah,
Exactly.
because football's not their dad or their parent. It's like, no, it was just something I did that I was good at and I enjoyed. But yeah, I'm more than that. And so you find a lot of people trying to burst out of these labels. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
right on point with what you're saying. That paradigm shift is valuable.
Awesome. So what are other, okay, so next to the labels, what are some other
Mhm.
mental health concerns that you see with
Mhm.
this population?
Wow, that's mental health is such a, like you've accurately and I think eloquently described it throughout your your purpose here. Um, it's not just individual, it's systemic, it's cultural. And so a lot of the things that are troubling with just the mental health issue itself is acknowledging that, okay, I got a mental health issue. Well, what is that? Because everybody's going to go to the extreme, right? Like you said, sex
Right.
offender. As soon as
Right.
you say sex offender, what do people think? You're on 2020. You're trying to rape a 15-year-old, and
Yeah.
whoa, that's not the vast majority. You're a pedophile. That is not the majority. The vast majority of sex offenders are the very complicated issues. It could be just something as simple as a public order offense where you were 17 or 21 and you were drunk,
Hmm.
yeah, with your friends, and you decide to urinate in the park, and the park happens to be an area where kids are playing,
Wow.
and now you're labeled as a sex offender because you're exposing yourself.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hold on. Okay. So
yeah,
you mean to tell me I could be 21.
yeah.
I was drinking, so now I got to use the bathroom. I go to
Hmm.
the park because there's kids there. Now I'm a sex offender.
No, no, kids don't even have to be there. It's a park where kids play. It's an open
Wow.
public area where kids play. And because you were doing it in that area, and the potential that kids might have been there was there, that public order offense might include the fact that, okay, now you're exposing yourself and, in front of
Wow.
children, and now you're labeled a sex offender, and you got to register as a sex offender going forward.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
imagine that.
I know, that hasn't even crossed my mind. So
Hmm.
I know that a lot of people, because when you're thinking of like where you're gonna move and
Yep,
you're looking at like, okay, how many sex offenders are in the area? You're not
yep.
thinking about okay, how many of these sex offenders just took a piss in the park and and are now labeled that. You're thinking the worst, right?
That's right.
You're
That's right.
you're thinking, hold on, I got a daughter in the 8th grade. I need to make sure that
That's
there's
right.
no sex offenders around.
That's right.
And you
Or a
mean
son, or even a
or
daughter or a
son,
son. Yeah,
right?
because that happens quite a bit to them too. I mean, imagine having to explain you're in your 30s, and you're right, and you have to explain in an interview why you got a background, and you got to tell
Wow,
that story.
wow,
It's a like you said, it's a constant reminder of you're defining me by what I did at
right,
an age that I am no longer. My identity is not even associated remotely with who I was at that time, but it's a consistent and continual reminder of what I did, not who I am.
right.
That's the power of a stigma, man. That's the power of a stigma, and it's you know you got to have some strong mental resilience to overcome it.
Right.
You do,
Wow.
yeah.
I've often said, like, being in a hospital, that sometimes we forget about we're so focused on the patient that we forget about the
Mhm.
person.
Well said.
And it's like, oftentimes we're forgetting about the person. We're sticking to this label,
That's
and
right.
that label, I don't think we're realizing. And I don't know if it's it's definitely not healthy for the individual, but I don't know if it's healthy for us as a society, to be in
Yeah.
fear of these people who are, who had a situation years ago, and now it's like, okay, well, I have to, be afraid of this sex
Hmm.
offender.
Hmm.
It's I don't know if it's healthy for us. It makes us kind of live in fear of
Suspicion. Yep.
certain
Yep.
individuals.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. I think it causes mental health issues.
Yeah.
Stigmas, I think that's what they do. That's why when you said, okay, what else can this bring? How does this affect us? Well, it affects us culturally, like you're saying.
Mm.
The cultural element of this is so ubiquitous that sometimes it's invisible and we don't really know it. It's unconscious. But when it hits, is powerful. And that's why unconscious bias and understanding that, especially from the employment side of the world, is really, really important if you're going to do work for this community. Because
Yeah.
a lot of employers are not actively going out saying, well, I ain't going to hire somebody who did that. No, I mean, come on.
Right.
Most people are looking for talent. They're like, okay, let me see what you got. Let me talk to you.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when you have to bring up something like what we just described,
Mm-hmm.
their unconscious biases, the
Right.
things that they're exposed to through media or life experience or just, vicarious learning, it hits them. And
Right.
oftentimes they don't know what to do with that. I mean, who knows what to do with something like that? Like, what?
Right.
I didn't even know that caused, irrational fear in me.
Right.
And what do most people do? They do what Adam and Eve did when they were
Go
discovered.
high.
They hide. That's right. They shame, man.
Yeah.
And that's never a good idea when an employer who's seeking to hire you is not going to talk to you again. That means you ain't
Yeah.
gonna get the job, man. That means that it's not gonna happen for you, and that's a
Right.
bad situation. Yeah.
Right. And I would, part of me hopes that the employer would feel some kind of, would at least be in a situation where they have to where it's a struggle, right? Where uh, hopefully they don't hear certain terms as just like, oh, yeah, I can't do that. Hopefully they hear certain terms as like, you know what, but this is a good person.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
but if I hire this person
Hmm.
and everybody else know or finds out or whatever, because at least that means that we're at least heading in the right direction. At least we're
Well said.
becoming aware that this is a
Hmm.
problem.
Hmm.
But if we're just hearing certain terms and like, oh no, and it's like we don't even realize we don't even realize that that's a problem. You know.
That's right. That is, you are speaking the gospel, and that's oftentimes I tell you, in the cases that I deal with, and I would say that that's the overwhelming majority of the situations are that the
Wow.
employer is saying, I want to find a way to bring somebody in,
Okay.
but we've
Good.
got this policy that says we can't do it. For example, the hotel industry, where a lot of folks get entry level employment. It's not
Mhm.
hard to get entry level employment in that arena, but if the hotel says, well, we don't hire people who have a felony conviction,
Mhm.
well,
Then
then
what you
you
gonna
don't even, yeah, they don't even get a shot. They don't even get a chance.
do? Right.
Well, no, they don't get a chance. Well, so then where are they supposed
Yeah.
to go? What are they supposed to do? How do you know the character of this individual like you just described?
Yeah.
All you know is what the record says, but you don't know the character of the individual. So how do you really know if this person is not going to be a good fit for you? They
Right.
don't, and so therefore they're excluding. And contemporarily speaking, in this age where we are now in a great resignation, it's specifically in the hospitality industry,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot afford to be excising certain groups out because of this or that. Oh no, we got to cut this group here. We got to cut that group there. Pretty soon you ain't got nobody to pick
You don't have
from, man.
nobody, right?
That's right.
Right.
And
Right.
that business needs labor. It is
Yeah.
not a highly technical business. It is a labor business.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
So we got to be aware of that.
Can you speak a little bit about it, what does it mean to a person? Because
Hmm.
you mentioned this earlier through your journey. What does it mean to a person to be able to have a job? What does it mean to their
Hmm.
mental health to be
Oh
able to
wow,
have
excellent.
to have a job?
Okay, so let's talk about mental hygiene. So, because you talk about mental health, and I'm just going to
Hmm.
bring a new term in, hygiene.
Okay.
So, from an employment perspective, now these studies have been carried on since the 30s.
Hmm.
There are certain things that are hygiene related, and certain things that are motivators for an individual or
Yeah.
incentives. So, hygiene means things that have to be there. They've got to be present in
Mhm.
order for a person to feel like, okay, I belong or I fit or this matters.
Yeah.
One of those hygiene issues is salary, money.
Right.
Money is a motivator only until you make enough where it's no longer a motivator.
Right. Right.
And so it becomes a hygiene issue, right? If I make enough money, it ain't about the money anymore. It's about
Right.
something else,
Right.
right? Usually it's the supervisor. So, from a mental hygiene standpoint, employment for this population says, I belong. And for a male, and I'll be more specific about males because
Mhm.
it says the same for females, but for males who are gendered into believing that I am valuable because I can support my family, because I can, I can bring in income enough so that my family doesn't have to struggle.
Right.
That is a powerful, powerful um, not only motivator, but a hygiene issue that says, okay, I have identity. And I always use the example of guys who are at parties and they're trying to get a date. And what's the first thing somebody asks you, when you're trying to date them? What do you do?
You do. Yeah.
Yeah. And the minute you start saying, well, see, what happened was, and like I'm kind of in between. They
You're not
run
as
from
attractive
Houston.
anymore.
That's right. That's right. That's like
Yeah.
having a 420 credit score and you're on, eHarmony. You ain't gonna get a
Yeah,
date, bro.
right.
It's not gonna happen. So that's one of those identity things that happen in our community that that says you fit or you belong or that you
Yeah.
have purpose and value. And so from a hygiene perspective, it's not just the dignity that work brings, it's purpose, it's identity, it's value,
Mm.
it's I belong, I fit. And so if I'm not able to get it, and I'm going to look at the counter perspective, if I'm not able to get it because I got this stigma,
Mhm.
then all of a sudden that's telling me that I'm, what's the point?
Right.
Why do I even want to try to do legitimate work anymore? Because if if they don't want me, if this systemic or institutional system doesn't want me and I don't belong, then why should I try to fit its criteria in order to do so? I'm just
Right.
going to operate on the other side of the world where I'm not doing W-2 work. I'm
Right.
doing
Right.
stuff that
Right.
that I do fit, that brothers who love, who show me love, even though I think it's a perversion, how some of the love that they do show. But they feel like I fit in that community. So why do I need to be concerned about doing this other stuff? I mean, we
Right.
we know obviously you don't want to be incarcerated. That's no place to be. You don't want to be running from the law. Fugitive life is not a good life. But if that's where you think you fit, you're going to have a real hard time finding symbols in the W-2 side of the world that says, "Oh, okay, that's me. I can resonate with that. I can get with that."
Right.
It's going to be a struggle to find those types of things. So we've got to help these individuals find ways to say, "Okay, this is where I fit." And this is what I really like doing. Now let me see if I can get a chance to do those types of things.
Right. Purpose. Right.
Purpose,
You mentioned
identity. Yeah.
purpose, but it's also that sense of belonging. Right.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
belong to this W-2 crowd. This
Well said.
this this street crowd or this whatever, though it is a perversion, at least they accepted me for who I am, right? And
Well
it's
said.
like,
You're right on point.
and unfortunately it's like I'm almost being pushed that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, because I think we will, and well, I I know I didn't put this in the questions, but I'm kind
That's
of
okay. Go for it. Go for it.
but I think it's almost like a natural instinct for survival, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so if this group is not gonna if this group is not gonna accept me, naturally I'm gonna gravitate to the best possible answer, right?
Yep.
Whether it's a gang, whether it's
Yep.
whatever it
Yep.
is, I'm gonna gravitate there because I see a way to survive there.
Bingo. Bingo. Yeah, you've tapped into the human social code. And that's bucket, and it's
Yeah.
it's an acronym that we use. Belonging, understanding, um, control, trust. And if you get all that in the community that's not W-2,
Hmm.
well, hello, that's where you're gonna be, man. That's where you're gonna be.
Right.
And it makes total sense. I don't ever disparage someone for wanting to do that. The
Right.
problem is that because it's counterculture, it's not pro-social, it's counter social.
Right.
You got all these other barriers that you got to try to fight through to get there.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's yeah, unfortunately is for them it's kind of a lose-lose,
Yeah.
and our society has set it up that way, unfortunately.
Well said. Very well said. That is, it is by design. I agree
Yeah.
with you. It is by design. Yes.
So let me ask you this. This obviously these last 2 years we've had COVID, right?
Yes.
And I don't know that I don't know anything about what you're gonna say on this answer. When it comes to this population, I noticed when I was in the hospital, I
Mhm.
I it was a joke amongst me and the patients, but early maybe 2000 late 2020 late
Uh,
2020 I had what I call my first COVID class.
okay.
And what I meant by
Mhm.
that is everybody in there was doing inpatient, and everybody in there was there specifically because of COVID. They've
Gotcha.
lost their job because of COVID or whatever. It was all of them was COVID related. And back then I was saying, we haven't seen the effects of COVID,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
mental health
Mhm.
effects of it.
Mhm. You were right.
And I'm wondering with our Justin's involved population, how does COVID or how has
Mm.
COVID affected them?
Mm. Yeah. And at first, when I got this question, I was like, okay, this is, this brother, he's on top of it. If you are in a system of incarceration, a jail or prison, federal or state, you are going to be exposed to COVID at a higher rate,
Mm,
period. COVID, it not only hit the senior citizens' homes, but it hit prisons and jails very, very hard. And so many of the individuals who were inside acquired COVID. Um,
yeah,
we don't know what we can't really necessarily pinpoint the statistics associated with that, like how many of them actually got COVID, how many of them recovered, how many of them passed away.
right, right.
But we have an aging population in our prisons, but in our jails, the churn is just a lot more indicative of all generations.
Hmm.
So when you come out of a correctional environment, number one, you probably have already had COVID. You may not have been vaccinated, um, and triple vaccinated with the booster and all those kind of things.
Right.
So, and you may be more inclined to wear a mask,
Mm,
or maybe less inclined to wear a mask depending on your um, affiliation of who you were inside the prison or the jail with. So, what I'm getting at there is this: you have a stigma of a felony conviction, but you also, or arresting, because you don't always get a felony convicted if you're in jail. Sometimes it's just arrest, or most of the times it's just arrest. But you have that stigma, that social stigma. Now you have the stigma of COVID because COVID's been politicized, and masks have been politicized, and vaccines have been politicized.
right,
And
right,
so now you've got a dual stigma to manage and address. And if you have uh, if the morphology of your brain is shifted because of the trauma you've experienced, not only as a child or through the experience of incarceration, you're just more likely to have a heightened anxiety.
hmm,
And many of the individuals who go through this, because they're not getting a steady income, they can't get medications. So that's a big problem. Guys getting out and they can get their meds inside, but once they're outside, it's a 3-month waiting list or a 4-month waiting list. Getting Medicaid is problematic, like I'm sure you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So they're going unmedicated. They have high anxiety. I don't know anybody who can work,
Oh,
who can
right,
find
right,
work, while they got all this other stuff going on.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And so what do? We self-medicate. We resort to self-medication. And then, and self-medication is readily available. I
Right.
can't get prescribed meds, but I can get that other stuff real quick and easy, especially in Colorado.
Oh,
Because
wow.
yeah, we have decriminalized, and we were the leaders in that endeavor. So I can find
Yeah.
anything I want to try to edge, dull the edge of the sharpness of that anxiety. So, wow.
His okay, another sidebar real quick. Has
Uh,
that been a good thing for
that's a great question. Good and bad is probably not
okay.
the space we want to be in, but I think,
Okay.
has it been something that's been harmful to employment. Most employers have, especially entry level employers in the
Okay.
Denver metro area, they have learned how to say, okay, we can manage up to a certain number as long as you can perform the essential functions of what we're asking you to do and meet the four evidence-based work ethic principles, which are showing up to work on time,
Mm-hmm.
being at your workstation when you're scheduled,
Mm-hmm.
getting along with the people who already work here, and
Right.
following your supervisor's instructions. If
Right.
you can demonstrate that on a 30-day basis, because that's typically kind of the probationary period, the observation probationary period may not be the official one, but that's the observational probationary period.
Mm-hmm.
If you can perform that, all of a sudden you're advancement material. because you know because everybody else is standing behind you in that line, right? But they're
Right.
failing
Right.
on one of those principles. And my 17-year-old is a he's the I think he epitomized it. COVID, he got a job in high school making $25 an hour,
Ooh.
being doing valet work for people who are doing the drive-through vaccines,
Uh-huh.
right? So
Wow.
then he got it through a friend. He got it through networking, which
Yeah.
is how most people find work.
Right.
So I'm thinking, well, that's pretty cool. My son's making good money, 17 years, But
Yeah.
I said, and then I said, so how are they liking you there? About 20 days in, he said, Dad, they love it because I show up to work on time. I'm always here. And I said, you meeting those four basic. I said, they're gonna promote you. As soon as I said that, he said, well, I don't want to get promoted, and he quit. that's that's the 17-year-old brain right there.
I don't want no more work. I'm good with
But no, yeah, that's right. I'm good. Nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work full. I want to live off your money, Dad. But, you know,
That's too much too
but
soon, Dad. Too much too
that's right.
soon.
Too much too soon. That's right. Yeah, that would cause him to have anxiety. But overall, he demonstrated, the efficacy of that principle. That hey, if you can do this, you can overcome these stigmas. You can overcome, this other these social labels that we put on people. The
Right.
problem is, can you get an opportunity to do so? Like I said,
Right.
networking, right?
Right.
Networking is the number one way to find high quality employment. Who are you networking with when all everyone around you in your community and everyone around you in your social system and your safety nets are doing the same things that you were doing that got you right
Right.
inside the system.
Right.
So
And then
that means you gotta, yeah, go
and
ahead.
then when you meet somebody new, you got to say, "Hey, hi, my name is Jared. I'm a felon." And it's like,
Yeah, like
oh,
that's not a good way to introduce. That's too much too soon, bro. Like you said, too much too soon. That's me revealing too much. I wasn't ready for
right, right,
that. Mhm,
right, right.
so
Well, look, I know we're gonna be wrapping up. One
yeah.
last question: if if the community could do anything to
Mhm.
help to resolve, to ease concerns, what would that be?
I'm not going to be as broad as maybe the question might have implied, but I'm gonna be more specific about the employment community.
Okay.
Um, so the employment community itself can be um, can have better results if they do two things. Number one, they assess who is a core employee within their organization. And what do I mean by assessed? Not only there's these things called employer fit algorithms out there. That's one of my specialties because it was the dissertation approach that I took. Employment retention for this population was one of them. So an
Right.
employer fit algorithm just means that there's this process, there's these formalized tools out there that assess individuals based on certain criteria patterns or how is someone going to act when they get in the workspace.
Mhm.
Because today it's not necessarily about doing the job because technology can really help us do most of our work now. It's just
Mhm.
how well do you get a chair manager within their unit, within their space? And so we have to learn how to use these formalized tools to help predict who's going to be a better employee.
Yeah.
But being able to get easy, intuitive access to those tools is really the most important piece of this for me. And how do we make that accessible? It's already accessible for C-suite employees, those who are at the executive level. How do we make it accessible for the people who are doing the work so that productivity can not only maintain but can actually grow and elevate? So if the employment community really wants to be more inclusive, the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion
Right.
concept, if they want to be more inclusive, then get more engaged with employer fit algorithms and indices, because that will allow you to look past stigmas and just look towards, hey, I can better predict how this person's going to act compared with who's already here. And if I'm bringing in somebody who can fit much easier, then first of all, that's less taxing on me as a supervisor or as a leader.
Right.
But number two, it's going to improve morale, which is going to improve productivity.
Right.
So
Right.
that's how I'd say we can get better at it. And I know that may have been it may not have been an answer that was easy to digest, but I think
No,
it's the
no,
right
no,
one.
no.
Yeah.
Look, that was perfect. Dr. Anderson, I greatly appreciate all the work you're doing and your
Thank you so
time.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for this.
Anytime.
And look, I look forward to talking to you again, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
man. I'd love to do it again. I'd love to do
Yeah.
it again. I think this was fabulous. And we have a lot more to talk about, obviously.
Absolutely.
But I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, you
Awesome.
got it, bro. It was a pleasure seeing you, meeting you, and working with you, Jared. All right.
Awesome,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Anderson. Thank you. And we're out.
Okay, man. Have a good
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Bret Anderson. I greatly appreciate his time, his expertise. He was an amazing guest. I hope you got a lot out of that. I know I did. And so I just want to thank him again for his time. You can always come check us out at nylc-mentalhealthcoach.com. You can also check out our podcast here on Spotify, as well as other providers. And always remember to say to yourself, my life counts. I'll see you next show. Peace.